Westlandia by Paul Fleischman, illustrated by Kevin Hawks. Kevin Hawks is actually a friend of mine. Of course he's miserable, moaned Wesley's mother. He sticks out. Like a nose, snapped his father. Listening through the heating vent, Wesley knew they were right. He was an outcast from civilization around him. He alone in his town disliked pizza and soda, alarming his mother and the school nurse. He found professional football silly. He refused to shave half of his head, the hairstyle worn by all the other boys, despite his father's bribe of $5. Passing the neighborhood's two styles of houses, garage on the left and garage on the right, Wesley alone dreamed of more exciting forms of shelter. He had no friends and plenty of tormentors. Look at that contraption he has on his backpack to protect him from the flying food thrown by the bullies chasing him down the road. Each afternoon, his mother asked him what he'd learned in school that day. That seeds are carried great distances by the wind, he answered on Wednesday. That each civilization has its staple food crop, he answered on Thursday. That school's over, and I should find a good summer project, he announced on Friday. As always, his father mumbled, I'm sure you'll use that knowledge often. Suddenly, Wesley's thoughts shot sparks. His eyes blazed. His father was right. He could actually use what he'd learned that week for a summer project that would top all others. He would grow his own staple food crop and found his own civilization. So, as you're listening to what Wesley does for his summer project, think about what could you do during this time for your big project. The next morning, he turned over a plot of ground in his yard. That night, a wind blew in from the west. It raced through the trees and set his curtains snapping. Wesley lay awake, listening. His land was being planted. Can you see him looking out the window and listening? Look at his contraption to check on the weather. And notice a few friends in the yard. "5 days later, the first seedlings appeared. You'll have almighty bedlam on your hands if you don't get those weeds out," warned his neighbor. "Actually, that's my crop," replied Wesley. "In this type of garden, there are no weeds." Following ancient tradition, Wesley's fellow gardeners grew tomatoes, beans, Brussels sprouts, and nothing else. Wesley found it thrilling to open his land to chance and invite the new and unknown. The plants shot up past his knees, then his waist. They seemed to be all of the same sort. Wesley couldn't find them in any plant book. Are those tomatoes, beans, or Brussels sprouts?" asked Wesley's neighbor. None of the above," replied Wesley. Look what kind of insects and critters he has in his garden as well. Fruit appeared, yellow at first, then blushing to magenta. Wesley picked one and sliced through the rind to the juicy purple center. He took a bite and found the taste an entrancing blend of peach, strawberry, pumpkin pie, and flavors he had no name for. Ignoring the shelf of cereals in the kitchen, Wesley took to breakfasting on the fruit. He dried half a rind to serve as a cup. built his own squeezing device, and drank the fruit's juice throughout the day. Pulling up a plant, he found large tubers on the roots. These he boiled, fried, or roasted on the family barbecue, seasoning them with a pinch of the plant's highly aromatic, that smell means how it smells, aromatic leaves. It was hot work tending to his crop. To keep off the sun, Wesley wove himself a hat from the strips of the plant's woody bark. His success with the hat inspired him to devise a spinning wheel and loom on which he wove loosely fitted robe from the stalk's soft inner fibers. Unlike jeans, which he found scratchy and heavy, the robe was comfortable, reflected the sun, and offered a myriad opportunities for pockets. I always add pockets to all the clothes I sew. They're very handy. His schoolmates were scornful, then curious. Grudgingly, Wesley allowed them 10 minutes apiece at his mortar, crushing the plant's seeds to collect the oil. The oil had a tangy scent and served him both as suntan lotion and mosquito repellent. He rubbed it on his face each morning and sold small amounts to his former tormentors at the price of $10 per bottle. "What's happened to your watch?" asked his mother one day. Wesley admitted that he no longer wore it. He told time by the stalk that he used as a sundial and divided the day into 8 segments, the number of petals on the plant's flowers. He adopted a new counting system as well, based likewise on the number 8. His domain, home to many such innovations, he named Westlandia. If you create a new civilization, what will you name it? Uninterested in traditional sports, Wesley made his own. These were designed for a single player and used many different parts of the plant. His spectators looked on with envy, realizing that more players would offer him more scope. Wesley invented other games that would include his schoolmates. Games rich with strategy and complex scoring systems. He tried to be patient with the other players' blunders. Yeah, it's got 3 hoops of different sizes. They're on stilts with baskets on their hands, throwing the fruit from the plant. Looks like, someone's about to fall. Someone else is crisscross. Are they going to catch before they fall, or are they going to go straight down, I wonder? August was unusually hot. Wesley built himself a platform and took to sleeping in the middle of Westlandia. He passed the evenings playing a flute he fashioned from a stalk, or gazing up at the sky, renaming the constellations. Do you see his flute? His parents noted Wesley's improved morale. "It's the first time in years he's looked happy," said his mother. Wesley gave them a tour of Westlandia. "What do you call this plant?" asked his father. Not knowing its name, Wesley had begun calling it Swist, from the sound of its leaves rustling in the breeze. In like manner, he named his new fabrics, games, and foods until he'd created an entire language. Look at his house with all of the stuff from his new civilization, his plants and his sundial. And then you see all the rest of the neighborhood houses that all look pretty much the same. Garage on the left, garage on the right. Mixing the plant's oil with soot, Wesley made a passable ink. As the finale to his summer project, he used the ink and his own 80-letter alphabet to record the history of his civilization's founding. There he is writing. See his flute? Wearing his hat and his tunic. He's got his cup from a dried fruit skin. Uh-oh. Who's this coming up? In September, Wesley returned to school. He had no shortage of friends. But now they seem to be all wearing things from his new place, his new civilization, Westlandia. The end. And here's the language. If you make a new civilization, you'll have to think about what objects you will have and what will they be called. Perhaps you could start just by creating your own code and writing messages. You could even send a copy of the code to a friend and then send them a message to decode